The movie I've been trying to do since I started this. It's Who's Your Caddy? It's a movie I vaguely remember seeing ads for that just really stood out in my mind because I was like, wow, this looks really bad. I remember a lot of people saying that it was like a ripoff of Caddyshack, but with an all black cast. And having watched it, I see the potential for a better movie, and I don't understand fully why people say that it's a ripoff of Caddyshack. I mean, it's a comedy that's set in a golf course, but beyond that, I mean, it could have been its own thing. It's really not doing anything that reminds me too much of Caddyshack, other than it's a golf course. So that I feel is kind of um, a bullshit comparison. But yeah, it's still a giant mess. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of something like Soul Plane, at least in style and approach. But well, you know what? Before we go into it, who's your caddy? What's the plot? So you got this rapper who's with his posse. They're trying to get into this golf course run by this uptight white guy, because of course it is, and pretty much shenanigans lead to one thing or another. The white guy tries to kick him out. They find ways to stay in, and there's like a romance brewing between the main character and the white guy's lawyer, and it's just really an excuse to have comedic bits. And there's a few bits that kind of made me laugh. Not a whole lot, and realistically, the laughter to non-laughing ratio is probably um, once every 30 minutes, which is not a good ratio on this. But um, you see, like with this movie, like I'm like, okay, it starts off with like when they're confronting this guy, that the white guy assumes that they're working, they're trying to find a job for him, so they're trying to work with him, which I'm like, okay, so racial misunderstanding, okay, so we can probably work with this might work. And no, it just falls back into the typical jokes that you find in these kinds of movies. Like I said, it's very reminiscent of Soul Plane. Like, you got the white guy's son who is kind of a dork, but then he tries to be black, and they approve of it. You got the white guy's wife who is too hot for him, and clearly doesn't really get the attention she deserves. So she goes with one of the other guys, because why not? And that's pretty much the gist of it. Like, in terms of what you can expect out of these jokes. I mean, it's like I said, it's really just the typical stuff like, oh, black people do this, black people do that. And of course, it's hard to say that it's fully racist, because it is, these people, they're not, like white people in like blackface or anything like that. It's, the actual people. But then you get to feeling like, probably much like with Soul Plane or other movies like it, it feels like it's manufactured by, I mean, not to be, I don't know, this is probably going to offend someone, but who cares? It feels like it's manufactured by a bunch of old white people who are like, okay, we got to get money from like the urban market. This is what they like, right? That's what it feels like with this movie. And, of course, with like Soul Plane, which I did last year. That's kind of how it feels like throughout the entirety of this. I don't know if it was, like, maybe it was like an all black staff, on camera, behind camera. But I kind of doubt it just by how it feels like, because I'm like, no, so much of this feels like it's reliance on, the typical, like, okay, let's find the most stereotypical thing around. I mean, granted, there are some stuff that's kind of sexist, but, you're going to find that regardless of race. So I'm not going to say that was, an old white comedy, but it probably was. But yeah, like, I mean, you can feel like there could be a good movie out of this, because, like, when it starts, and I think I probably forgot to mention this earlier going into this tangent, but when it starts, you get this whole thing where it's like, okay, the white guy doesn't want them. Clearly, it's a race thing. They kind of joke about it, which kind of made me smile. Not really laugh, but I was like, okay, I can see where you're going with this. And yeah, like, the movie starts off in that direction. Like, they even mention, like, oh yeah, we want to stick it to the man. That's why we're, doing this, like, early on. Like, because they buy up, like, like early on, just to screw around with them, they buy off like a piece of the land that was up for sale. So I was like, okay, that's kind of funny, I guess, but not really in execution. And it's not even much of the plot, really. But you get that, and you're thinking like, okay, maybe it's gonna be going somewhere. Maybe there's something interesting here, and again, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't really go anywhere with it that you would want it to. It's just kind of a basic, like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And like I said, it's just a bunch of the stuff that you would expect to see in comedies like these. Like, nothing that really is pushing it, so that's disappointing. And yeah, I really don't know what else to say about this movie other than it's just one long, this is what's going on in the movie. Oh wow.